We're going to cover how to add hosts, create groups, and set credentials with LogicMonitor. After the account setup wizard runs, you'll be left at the Add Host wizard. Simply enter the IP address or DNS name of the first host you wish to monitor, click Next, and click Next again. LogicMonitor will do a series of basic checks, and assuming the default community of public does not work, it will ask you to identify what kind of device this is that you're adding. In this case, we're adding a Cisco switch, so we'll select Network Equipment and click Next. LogicMonitor will attempt to verify the kind of device and fail because the SMP community did not work. So in this case, we click Change It and Test Again and enter the actual community that will have effect on this device, which is not public. Say OK, LogicMonitor will discover the device again, find that everything works, and then you can click Submit. You've now added a complete host. The thing to note at this point is the first time you set the SMP community, it gets set globally as the global default. So we can see by looking at the properties on this host that it is added SMP community as a property of this host, and it is also set as a property on the top level node. So it will be inherited by all nodes underneath it unless overridden. There's the SMP community set right then. So what this means is we can now add another host, and we won't have to set the SMP community, it'll just be inherited from the top level node. So then in this case we just add the IP address, allow the default agent, click Next. This time it doesn't ask us what kind of device it is because it could determine it automatically, and we click, discovery is completed, and there's the host and everything about it. We can also create host groups. Simply enter the host group name and optional description and click Submit. You can then drag devices into the host group. Hosts that are not a member of any group will just show at the bottom of the host tree. You can also create child groups. So in this case we want a West Coast network devices group, and then we can then drag hosts into that group. Host groups are useful for setting properties on. If you have different SMP communities or other properties that are in effect for different groups, you can edit and add a property that will override the default inherited properties. So just start typing the property you wish to set and its value. So you can set properties for SMP community, you can set database credentials, you can set JMX credentials. All those will be inherited down by all members of those groups. So in this case, to set the MySQL user to be the username monitor user, that will be inherited by all the members of that group. You can see that such properties in the Customized Properties tab. You can see up the top there the JDBC MySQL user is set to monitor user. To delete a host, you can simply right-click the host and select Delete. You can either delete it from its group membership or from the system entirely. In this case, we delete entirely so that we can demonstrate adding the host by the non-wizard method, the expert mode. Expert mode simply lets you add in a few more options. Again, you only need the IP address and DNS name, but it does give the option of changing the display name, which is how the host is displayed within LogicMonitor, adding a host description, linking to URL, disabling alerts, and optionally assigning group membership. You can also at this point add specific properties that have effect only on this host. Another item to note is that unlike the wizard, the expert mode does not check the validity of the properties you assign. So you can assign an incorrect SMP community and the system will happily accept it. This can be useful if you're later going to go on and correct the SMP community on the host itself. But in this case, right now, we've discovered nothing about this host because the SMP community is invalid. Of course, even if a host has been added by the wizard, you can always go back and edit the host to change its display name, add in descriptions, set specific properties, and so forth. Another thing to note is that hosts can be a member of as many groups as you wish, so you can create multiple groups based on location, based on business units, based on functionality such as storage or networking. You cannot drag a host from one group to add it to another because that will instead simply move it, as in this case. What you can do is you can right-click the host, select Edit, and then manually select the groups to make the host appear in more than one group. Another way to do it is you can right-click the group and select Set Membership, and then you can select which host should appear within that group. Another type of group to mention is dynamic groups. Dynamic groups automatically assign hosts to be members based on the properties of the hosts. The Applies To field specifies which hosts will be a member of this group. If you want all hosts to be a member, you can simply enter true, which is always true for all hosts. Otherwise, you can use the wizard to specify specific types of hosts, hosts that are a member of other groups, hosts based on name. In this case, we want all Cisco devices to be a member of this group, so we click Submit, and we can see that this Cisco devices group now contains both our Cisco devices. The interesting thing is, if we ever add a Cisco device in the future to LogicMonitor, it will automatically show up in that Cisco devices group. To delete groups, you can either delete the group or you can delete all hosts within the group. That's all. Thanks for joining us.